Your competitor arrives on time, prepared, focused, ready. He checks his watch. 5 minutes pass. 10 minutes. 20. His confidence turns to confusion. Confusion turns to frustration. Frustration turns to rage. By the time you finally arrive, the battle is already won. This wasn't luck. This was the exact strategy Miyamoto Musashi used in his most famous duel. On April 13, 1612, Musashi faced Sasaki Kojiro, considered the greatest swordsman in Japan. Kojiro's sword was legendary, his technique flawless, his reputation unmatched. Everyone expected Musashi to lose. But Musashi understood something most warriors never grasp. The real battle happens before the first strike, and in the next 9 minutes, you'll learn the psychological warfare tactics that made Musashi undefeated in 60 duels, and how to use them today in negotiations, competitions, and any moment where you need the upper hand. Welcome to Japanese Secrets, where ancient samurai wisdom meets modern life. Before we begin, comment below which city you're watching from and what you think about this video. Now, what Musashi did before that duel wasn't just strategy. It was psychological warfare refined to an art form over decades of life-or-death combat. The morning of the duel, Kojiro arrived at Ganryu 9 hours early. He wore his finest clothes. His sword gleamed. His students gathered to watch their master's inevitable victory. The agreed time came. Musashi didn't appear. 1 hour passed. Kojiro paced the beach. His students whispered nervously. 2 hours, 3 hours. Kojiro's composure cracked, his mind filled with questions. Is Musashi afraid? Is this disrespect? Should I leave? Each minute that passed, Kojiro's mental state deteriorated. His focus shattered. His breathing quickened. When Musashi finally arrived in a simple boat, his appearance was calculated chaos. He hadn't bathed. His hair was wild. He carried no proper sword, just a wooden weapon he'd carved from the boats while on the journey over. Kojiro exploded with rage, screaming accusations of cowardice and disrespect. And that's exactly what Musashi wanted, because Musashi understood the first principle of psychological warfare. The warrior who controls his own mind wins against the warrior whose mind is controlled by emotion. While Kojiro's thoughts raced with anger and humiliation, Musashi's mind remained empty and clear. The actual duel lasted seconds. Kojiro attacked in fury. Musashi moved with precision. 1 strike. Victory. But the real victory happened 3 hours earlier when Musashi decided to be late. This wasn't an isolated incident. Throughout his life, Musashi employed psychological tactics that gave him advantages before combat even began. In another famous encounter with the Yoshioka clan, he arrived deliberately late again. But this time, he also changed the meeting location at the last moment. When his opponents finally found him, they were exhausted, disoriented, and mentally defeated. Musashi also used unconventional weapons to create psychological uncertainty, sometimes wooden swords against steel, sometimes two swords when opponents expected one. The unpredictability itself became a weapon because it forced enemies to think, to question, to hesitate. And in combat, hesitation is death. But here's what makes Musashi's approach truly sophisticated. He didn't use these tactics to compensate for weakness. He used them because he understood that technical skill alone isn't enough. The greatest swordsman with a chaotic mind loses to a mediocre swordsman with a clear one. Musashi wrote in the Book of Five Rings, the important thing in strategy is to suppress the enemy's useful actions but allow his useless actions. By arriving late, by appearing disheveled, by using strange weapons, Musashi triggered useless actions in his opponents: anger, confusion, overthinking, loss of composure. Meanwhile, his own useful actions remained intact: calm observation, precise timing, decisive movement. So how do you apply Musashi's psychological warfare today? First, understand that the battle begins long before the actual confrontation. In business negotiations, before you even enter the room, consider what mental state you want your counterpart in. Do you want them confident or uncertain, rushed or patient, eager to close or willing to walk away? Control the environment to create the state that serves you. Second, master strategic unpredictability. Musashi didn't arrive late to every duel. Sometimes he arrived early, sometimes exactly on time. The unpredictability kept opponents guessing, unable to prepare mentally. In your field, this might mean varying your approach to meetings, changing your typical response patterns, or introducing unexpected elements that force others to think rather than operate on autopilot. Third, use the power of strategic silence and timing. Musashi understood that sometimes not acting is the most powerful action. When everyone expects immediate response, delay creates pressure. In negotiations, the person who can comfortably sit in silence usually wins. In competitions, the person who doesn't react to provocations maintains advantage. Fourth, create small disruptions that accumulate into large advantages. Musashi's wooden sword wasn't just practical, it was psychologically destabilizing. His opponent expected to face traditional steel and had trained against that assumption. What small element can you introduce that forces others to recalibrate their expectations? Finally, and most importantly, maintain your own mental clarity while disrupting others. This is the crucial difference between strategy and chaos. Musashi could afford to create uncertainty because his own mind remained certain. He could afford to arrive late because his own composure was unshakable. Before you employ any psychological tactic, ensure your own foundation is solid. Miyamoto Musashi died undefeated not because he was the strongest or the fastest, but because he understood that warriors defeat themselves. Your job isn't to beat your opponent, it's to create conditions where they beat themselves. Make them emotional while you stay calm. Make them overthink while you trust instinct. Make them anxious while you remain patient. The samurai knew that the greatest victories come without striking a blow, because by the time physical confrontation arrives, the battle is already decided. Comment below which psychological principle you'll test first. And if you want more authentic samurai strategy for modern competition, subscribe to Japanese Secrets. The ancient warriors are teaching us still.